My name is Nana May, and this happened to me. My phone vibrated while I was folding laundry. It was my bank. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the notification. $130,000 authorized. My hands froze. I don't spend that kind of money. Not anymore. Not at my age. And then another notification. Card used at a luxury boutique. I stared at the screen. There was only one person who had access. My son. My chest tightened. Why would he use my card? Before I could call him, my phone buzzed again. A voice note. From him. I pressed play. His voice was cheerful. Careless. Yeah. Honey, just take mom's card. There's $130,000 on it. Treat yourself. Silence. I thought maybe I misheard. I replayed it. Take mom's card. My card. There's $130,000. My savings. Treat yourself. I sat down slowly. He didn't know the voice note had forwarded to me. He meant to send it to his wife. Instead, he sent it to his mother. Pause. One question kept repeating in my head. When did I become an ATM? I tried calling him immediately. No answer. I called again. Voicemail. I wasn't angry yet. Just confused. After everything I sacrificed. After the nights I stayed awake when he had fevers. After selling my jewelry so he could start his business. When did I become a card number? My phone buzzed again. A group chat notification. Family group. Sunday dinner red heart. His wife had sent a photo. Shopping bags. Designer logos. Caption. Retail therapy works wonders relieved face. I zoomed in. There it was. My card in her hand. I felt something shift inside me. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just heavy. Like a door closing quietly. That evening, he finally called. Hey, Mom. Everything okay? His voice sounded relaxed. Normal. I swallowed. Yes. I got a bank notification. A pause. Oh, yeah. About that. Another pause. We were going to tell you. Were. Going. To. Tell. Me. I felt heat in my chest. Tell me what, Daniel? It's not a big deal. It's just temporary. We'll put it back. Temporary? Temporary is borrowing $200, not $130,000. I whispered without asking. He sighed. Mom, it's family. That word. Family. The same word I used when I co-signed his loan. When I babysat every weekend. When I cooked meals for their housewarming party. Family. But family doesn't take. Family asks. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. I said softly, I didn't know I was part of the decision. Silence. Then his wife's voice in the background. Is she upset? He muted the phone. But not fully. I heard her laugh lightly. Tell her we'll replace it. Replace it. Like it was a broken lamp. Not my retirement. Not my security. I felt small. And suddenly old. That night I couldn't sleep. I opened my banking app again. There were multiple charges. Not just one. Boutique. Spa. Jewelry. A resort booking. Total pending amount, $130,000. I didn't know it then. But someone had already increased the card limit. I hadn't requested that. Who did? My heart began to race. I opened account settings. Authorized user, Daniel. Limit increase requested 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks. They planned this. Before telling me. Before pretending it was temporary. The next morning, I drove to their house. I didn't call first. I just went. I wanted to see his face. When he opened the door, he looked surprised. Mom, you should have called. Should have called. To visit my own son? His wife walked into the hallway wearing a new necklace. Diamond. Small, but unmistakable. I recognized the brand. I bought myself a bracelet from there once. Before I sold it. To help him. She smiled politely. Good morning, Nana. Not Mom. Not warmly. Just Nana. Like a guest. I stepped inside. And that's when I noticed something else. New furniture. A massive television mounted on the wall. The tags were still attached. I looked at him. You said it was temporary. It is. Then why does it look permanent? His jaw tightened. Mom, we're investing in our lifestyle. Investing? With my money. I wanted to shout. I wanted to say, after everything I sacrificed. But I didn't. I stayed quiet to keep the peace. That's what mothers do, right? He walked me to the kitchen, lowered his voice. You have plenty saved. You don't even travel. That hurt more than the money. Because he was right. I don't travel. I don't spend. Because I was saving. For security. For emergencies. For dignity. I asked gently, did you think I wouldn't notice? He looked away. That's when I knew. He didn't think I'd check. He thought I'd trust blindly. Like always, his wife entered the kitchen, arms crossed. It's not like we stole it. Not like we stole it. I stared at her. Then what would you call it? She shrugged. Family support. Support. Interesting word. Support is helping someone stand, not standing on someone else. Then something strange happened. The doorbell rang. Daniel checked the camera on his phone. His expression changed. Mom, maybe you should go. Why? He hesitated. Just please. Too late. The front door opened. A delivery man wheeled in something enormous. A grand piano. Brand new. Receipt taped on top. I didn't need to see the amount. I already knew. My card. I felt the humiliation settle deep. Public. Obvious. Undeniable. The delivery man asked, where would you like it, ma'am? She smiled proudly. In the living room. Daniel wouldn't meet my eyes. I whispered, you bought a piano? His wife answered for him. I deserve beautiful things. Deserve. I almost laughed. After everything I sacrificed. When did I become invisible? I walked toward the door. No shouting. No scene. Just dignity. At least I thought so. Until his wife said quietly behind me, you'll get it back eventually. Eventually. Like I'm on a payment plan. I stopped at the doorway, turned slowly, and said something I hadn't said in years. No. They both looked confused. No, you won't eventually give it back. Daniel frowned. What does that mean? I met his eyes. It means I'm calling the bank. Silence. Real silence. Not polite silence. Fierce silence. His wife scoffed. You wouldn't. I looked at her calmly. Watch me. And for the first time, Daniel didn't look confident. He looked nervous. Because he didn't know something yet. He didn't know I had already spoken to the bank manager that morning. He didn't know I asked about fraud procedures. He didn't know I had copies of every transaction printed. He didn't know. There was something else attached to that card. Something he had completely forgotten. And when the bank finishes reviewing the activity, it won't just be the money at risk. It will be his business. Because the card was linked to his company account. And if the bank flags it, they freeze everything. I didn't know if I would go that far. But I knew one thing. I was done being silent. As I drove away, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I answered. Mrs. May. Yes. This is your bank's fraud department. Pause. We need to ask you a few questions. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about $130,000. This was about control. And someone was about to lose it. My phone was still in my hand when the voice on the other end lowered. Mrs. May, can you confirm you authorized the $130,000 in charges? I didn't answer immediately, because the truth was complicated. Did I authorize my son to use my card years ago? Yes. Did I authorize him to drain it? No. The silence stretched. Mrs. May. I swallowed. No. I did not approve those purchases. There it was. A line crossed. Once spoken, it couldn't be undone. The woman's tone shifted, professional, sharper. Understood. We're placing a temporary freeze on the account while we investigate. Freeze. Such a small word. Such a powerful one. I closed my eyes. Will this affect any linked accounts? Another pause. Yes, ma'am. If the card is connected to external business accounts, those may be temporarily restricted pending review. My heart thudded. Daniel's company, his payroll, his operating funds. I didn't know it then, but that freeze would reach further than I imagined. I drove home in silence. The house felt too quiet, too large. I made tea but didn't drink it. My phone buzzed again. Daniel. I stared at his name flashing. For a moment, I almost didn't answer. Then I did. What did you do? No greeting. No warmth. What do you mean? My account's locked. My business account, too. His voice wasn't calm anymore. It wasn't confident. It was panicked. I let a breath out slowly. I told you I was calling the bank. You said you were calling. You didn't say fraud. That word hung heavy between us. Fraud. I didn't accuse you of anything, I said quietly. I answered their question. You could have talked to me first. I almost laughed. I did. Silence. He knew. His wife's voice came faintly through the phone. What's happening? He snapped back at her, just wait. Then to me again, lower, urgent. Mom, they froze payroll. My employees can't get paid. Employees. People. Families. The weight of that pressed against my chest. I didn't know it would go that far. Well, it did. There it was. Blame. As if I had forced his hand. As if I had swiped the card myself. I didn't spend $130,000, I said softly. He exhaled hard. We were going to fix it. When? Another silence. Longer this time. He arrived at my house 30 minutes later. Not alone. His wife came too. She didn't look as confident as yesterday. The diamond necklace was still around her neck. But it didn't sparkle the same. Daniel walked straight into my living room. You need to call them back. No hello. No apology. Just instruction. I studied his face. He looked tired. Sweaty. Afraid. Sit down, I said calmly. He didn't. I don't have time to sit, Mom. This is serious. I nodded. Yes, it is. His wife stepped forward. We didn't think you'd overreact. Overreact. Interesting choice of word. I answered a question truthfully, I replied. She crossed her arms. You know how banks are. They take everything too far. No, banks don't take things too far. People do. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. Okay, fine. We messed up. But freezing the business? That's extreme. Is it? Yes. That's my livelihood. My livelihood. My retirement. My security. I looked at him steadily. You used my card to fund your lifestyle. He winced slightly. It wasn't like that. What was it like? He opened his mouth. Closed it. Nothing came out. Then something shifted. His voice softened. Mom, I'm under pressure. Pressure. The word felt familiar. I've been trying to keep up, he continued. Clients expect success. Image matters. Ah, image. So the piano was an image. The spa was an image. The resort was an image. And I was the invisible sponsor. His wife spoke again, but quieter now. We just needed help. I tilted my head slightly. Help is requested. Not taken. She looked down. First crack in her armor. Daniel paced. They'll unfreeze it if you confirm it wasn't fraud. I didn't answer immediately, because something else had been bothering me. There's something I don't understand. He stopped pacing. What? The limit increase. His eyes flickered. What about it? I didn't request it. Silence. Thick. Uncomfortable. Did you? He looked away. That was answer enough. I had access, he said finally. It was just a form. A form I never signed. You gave me permission years ago. For emergencies. His voice rose. This was an emergency. A piano? He had no response. And then the humiliation moment came. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just painful. His wife spoke again. You don't even use that money. There it was. The truth beneath it all. Because I'm quiet. Because I live simply. Because I don't show off. They thought I didn't need it. I felt tears press behind my eyes. But I didn't let them fall. I was saving it, I said gently. For what? She asked. For the day I couldn't depend on anyone. Daniel looked stricken. Mom, I shook my head. Not because I don't love you, but because life changes. And clearly, it had. My phone rang again. Same bank number. All three of us looked at it. Daniel whispered, answer it. I did. Mrs. May, we flagged unusual linked activity on your son's business account. Daniel's face went pale. What kind of activity? I asked carefully. There were recent transfers from the business account to cover personal luxury expenses before the card increase. Daniel stepped closer, trying to hear. So this wasn't the first time, I said quietly. No, ma'am. My stomach dropped. He hadn't just used my card. He had been shifting funds before that, balancing things, hiding things. The woman continued, if you confirm the charges were unauthorized, a full audit may be required. Audit. That word changed everything. Because an audit doesn't just freeze accounts. It exposes them. I hung up slowly. Daniel stared at me. You wouldn't. His voice wasn't angry now. It was pleading. You'd ruin me. I met his eyes. When you sent that voice note, did you think about ruining me? Silence. Heavy. His wife stepped back slightly. For the first time, she looked unsure. Daniel whispered, I didn't think you'd see it. Exactly. He didn't think. Not about me. Not about consequences. Not about respect. I walked to the window. Looked outside. The world felt normal. Cars passing. Neighbors walking dogs. But inside this room, everything was shifting. I don't want to ruin you, I said quietly. Then call them. I turned back slowly. But I also won't protect you from your own choices. His shoulders dropped. So what now? That was the real question. What now? Because this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about trust, authority, position. When did I become someone whose permission didn't matter? I looked at him carefully. I'll tell the bank I need time. Relief flooded his face. But, I continued, you will return every dollar. Immediately. His wife's head snapped up. We can't. You can sell the piano. Silence. Her jaw tightened. Daniel hesitated. That's embarrassing. I raised an eyebrow. Embarrassing? More embarrassing than your mother calling fraud services? More embarrassing than draining her savings? He looked down, and for the first time, he looked like my son again. Not a businessman, not an image builder, just a boy who made a mistake. But something still felt unfinished, because the bank mentioned something else. Linked activity, transfers, luxury expenses before the card increase. There was more to this, more than shopping, more than lifestyle. And as Daniel stood in my living room, pale and shaken, I realized something cold. This wasn't about spoiling his wife. This was about covering something bigger, and I hadn't uncovered it yet. The email was only 3 paragraphs long. 3 paragraphs. That was all it took to make my hands go cold. Subject: preliminary review findings. I read it once, then again, then a third time, slowly. There had been 6 transfers, not from my account, from Daniel's business account. Each one moved into a private holding account before large, personal expenditures were made. The dates lined up perfectly. The spa weekend, the piano deposit, the resort booking. But there were 2 transfers that didn't match any luxury purchase I knew about. 2 large ones, $28,000, $35,000. No description, no vendor, just coded references. My heart began to pound. What was he moving money for? And why hide it? I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the screen. This wasn't careless spending anymore. This was structured, deliberate, organized. You don't create holding accounts by accident. You don't reroute funds without intent. The thought slipped into my mind before I could stop it. What if the piano wasn't the real problem? What if I was just the emergency patch? My phone buzzed again. Daniel. I didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, I scrolled further down the email. The bank had attached a note. If unauthorized activity is confirmed, a formal audit may expand to all associated accounts and vendors. All associated accounts, vendors, clients, employees. If this unraveled, it wouldn't just touch him. It would expose everything. I finally answered his third call. Mom. His voice sounded different. Not angry, not defensive, nervous. I saw the email. Silence. So he knew. They sent you the transfer summary? He asked carefully. Yes. Another silence. Then it's not what you think. That sentence. The universal warning sign. What is it then? I asked calmly. He exhaled slowly. It's just cash flow management. $35,000 is cash flow. It's temporary. For what? No answer. Just breathing. I closed my eyes. Daniel. His voice lowered. I had to cover something. There it was again. Cover. Cover what? It's complicated. No, I said gently. It's simple. Either you tell me or the bank finds out. That landed. I could almost hear his thoughts racing. Calculating. Risk versus exposure. Finally he said it. I lost a contract. The words were rushed. Thrown out quickly, like ripping off a bandage. What contract? Our biggest one. My stomach dropped. How big? 40% of our revenue. The room felt smaller. When? 3 months ago. 3 months. 3 months of pretending. 3 months of image. 3 months of illusion. You didn't tell me. I was fixing it. With my credit card? Silence. He continued, words tumbling now. I thought I could replace it fast. We had promising leads. But payroll kept coming. Rent. Supplier payments. I moved money around to keep everything steady. And the luxury expenses? Another pause. That was pressure too. Pressure to do what? To look successful. There it was again. Image. If clients thought he was thriving, they'd trust him. If his wife believed they were thriving, she wouldn't panic. If his employees believed the company was strong, they wouldn't leave. So he built a stage set and funded it with illusion. And when illusion wasn't enough, he used me. You increased my limit because you were desperate, I said quietly. Yes. You bought the piano because you didn't want her to know. A long pause. Yes. That hurt more than I expected. Not the money, the secrecy, the choice. You chose to deceive your wife instead of telling her the truth. I didn't want to disappoint her. And disappointing me was easier? That question lingered. Heavy. He didn't answer. Because he couldn't. I stood and walked slowly to the window. Outside, everything still looked peaceful. But my son's world was built on a crack in the foundation. How bad is it? I asked softly. Another long silence. Then, if we don't land a major contract in 30 days, we won't make payroll next month. There it was, the real emergency. Not the piano, not the spa, not the resort. Collapse. He hadn't just been spending. He'd been stalling, borrowing time. And when time ran out, he borrowed from me. Does your wife know? I asked. No. Why? She believes we're expanding. I almost laughed. Expanding? Yes. Expanding debt, expanding lies, expanding risk. She deserves the truth, I said. I know, but you won't tell her. His silence answered again. The pieces were clicking into place now. The holding account, the quiet transfers, the urgency. He wasn't stealing for greed. He was drowning. And instead of asking for help, he tried to swim in secret. But drowning people don't think clearly. They grab whatever floats. Even if it's their mother's retirement. The bank mentioned an audit, I said carefully. I know. If they dig deep, it'll scare clients. And investors. Investors? This was bigger than I thought. How many investors? 3 silent partners. Silent? Of course. Do they know about the contract loss? No. My heart pounded harder. So you've hidden it from your wife, your partners, your employees. And now for me, I finished quietly. I wasn't hiding it from you. You were using me. That one landed. Hard. He sounded smaller now. Mom, I didn't mean for it to spiral. That word again. Spiral. Like everything just happened. Like he wasn't steering. When were you going to tell me? I asked. When I fixed it. When were you going to tell her? Same answer. When I fixed it. And what if he couldn't fix it? That was the question hanging over everything. I sat back down slowly. The truth was heavier than the money. If I confirmed fraud, the audit would expose him. If I denied fraud, I would be tied to the illusion. Complicit. Protective. Enabling. I thought about the voice note. She won't even notice. That sentence echoed now. He thought I wouldn't notice the money. But he also didn't notice something else. I am not weak. I am not blind. And I am not a backup plan. Daniel, I said softly. Yes. If I help you, it won't be to protect your image. Silence. It will be to protect your future. He didn't respond, because he didn't yet understand the difference. You have 30 days, I continued. To do what? To tell the truth. To who? Everyone. His breathing changed. Faster. Mom, that would destroy confidence. No, I said calmly. The lie will. Silence. Thick. Heavy. Terrified silence. If I give the bank reason to pause the audit, I said slowly, you use that time to clean this up honestly. And if I don't, I didn't raise my voice. I let them proceed. He knew what that meant. Exposure. numbers under light, questions he couldn't dodge. Mom, his voice cracked. For the first time in this entire storm, he sounded like a child again, afraid, not of losing money, afraid of losing control. I don't know how to fix it, he admitted. That was the first honest thing he'd said all day. And somehow, that scared me more than the transfers, because if he didn't know how to fix it, then what exactly had he been building? We sat in silence on the phone. 2 generations. One mistake. One ticking clock. Finally I said, "You're coming over tomorrow. With your financial statements." "What? All of them?" "That's private." So it was my retirement. Another silence. Then quietly, "Okay." After I hung up, I looked at the email one more time. $28,000. $35,000. Still unaccounted for. Still unexplained. Because something told me the lost contract wasn't the full story. Something else was hiding inside those numbers. The message stayed on my screen all night. "You need to ask your son about the investor meeting he missed." Missed. Not postponed. Not rescheduled. Missed. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw numbers turning into cracks. Contracts dissolving. Payroll failing. And Daniel standing in the center of it, pretending nothing was burning. Morning came too fast. I made coffee. Didn't drink it. Just stood in the kitchen holding the mug, staring at the door. At exactly 9:12 a.m., Daniel arrived. On time. That almost made me laugh. He looked tired. Not dramatic. Not devastated. Just worn. He carried a leather folder under his arm. "I printed everything," he said quietly. I nodded toward the dining table. He sat, opened the folder. Financial statements. Expense sheets. Outstanding invoices. Projected revenue forecasts. It all looked clean. Too clean. I scanned the pages slowly. "Where's the investor calendar?" I asked casually. He froze. Only for a second. But I saw it. "What calendar?" "The meeting schedule." He swallowed. "Oh, that." "Yes," I said softly. "That." He avoided my eyes. It wasn't important. Then why did someone text me about it? That snapped his head up. "What?" I slid my phone across the table. He read the message. His face changed. Not confusion. Recognition. "You know who sent that?" I said. Silence. "Daniel." He ran his hand over his face. "It was Martin." "Which Martin?" "Martin Hayes. One of the silent partners." I leaned back slowly. "Why would Martin text me?" "Because he thinks you still have influence over me." That stung more than it should have. "And do I?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer. Instead, he stared at the table. "The meeting wasn't missed," he said carefully. "It was complicated." I waited. He shifted in his seat. "They wanted updated numbers. They deserve updated numbers. I didn't have good ones. So you didn't show up." "It wasn't like that." "Then explain it." He exhaled sharply. "They requested documentation on projected contracts. And one of the projections wasn't finalized." My stomach tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means I included a deal that wasn't signed yet." I blinked. "You projected revenue from a contract that didn't exist?" "It was almost done." "But not done." He looked at me. "It would have been done." But it wasn't. Silence again. And suddenly I understood. The expansion illusion. The spa weekend. The piano. The luxury lifestyle. It wasn't just to convince his wife. It was to convince investors. He had built a forecast on hope. And when Hope didn't sign the paperwork, he avoided the meeting. "They were going to ask about that contract," I said slowly. "Yes. And if they realized it wasn't real, they might pull funding." There it was. The real fear. Not embarrassment. Not pride. Withdrawal. If investors pulled out, the company wouldn't just struggle. It would collapse immediately. "How much have they invested?" I asked quietly. "Combined?" "Almost $900,000. My heart skipped. $900,000. And he thought hiding would solve that? "When were you planning to tell them?" I asked. "When the deal closed." "When will it close?" Silence. That silence told me everything. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Clarity. "You didn't miss the meeting," I said. "You ran from it." He didn't argue. Because he couldn't. I was buying time. You keep saying that. Because it's true. No, I said softly. You're borrowing time. And interest always comes due. He looked away. I picked up the financial statements again. Something caught my eye. What's this consulting payment? I asked. He stiffened. Which one? 28,000. His jaw tightened. That's strategic. For what? Business positioning. Daniel, it's confidential. I looked at him carefully. That's one of the unexplained transfers. He didn't respond. And the $35,000? His breathing changed again. Faster. There were advisory services involved. From who? No answer. I set the papers down. You're not just hiding projections. He stayed silent. You're hiding people. Minutes passed. Heavy minutes. Finally he spoke. There was another investor. I felt the room tilt. Another? Short term. How short? 3 months. A loan. Yes. For how much? 60,000. 60. My mind did the math instantly. $28,000. $35,000. Plus smaller fees. Interest. It matched. You borrowed privately, I said. Yes. From who? He hesitated. That hesitation frightened me more than anything so far. Daniel. It's handled. From who? He swallowed. Someone who expects fast returns. That wasn't an answer. That was a warning. What kind of returns? I asked quietly. Profit share. In what? The next contract. The one that doesn't exist, I thought. So if the contract fails. He didn't respond. Daniel, they'll be upset. Upset, I repeated. He nodded faintly. How upset? He looked me in the eyes then. And for the first time, I saw real fear. Mom, I can't default. My heart thudded. What happens if you do? Silence. Then very quietly. It gets messy. Messy. That word again. Men use soft words for hard consequences. Why didn't you tell me this yesterday? I asked. I didn't want you to worry. I almost laughed. Too late. You involved private money, I said slowly. Without informing your partners. Yes. You projected and signed contracts. Yes. You skipped investor meetings. Yes. You used my credit line. He closed his eyes. Yes. The truth was finally sitting naked between us, and it was worse than I imagined. I stood up, walked to the window again. Outside, children were riding bikes. Neighbors were watering lawns. Normal life. Inside my house, a silent financial bomb was ticking. Daniel, I said calmly, does your wife know about the private investor? No. Do your partners? No. Does anyone besides you? He hesitated. Martin suspects. Ah, that's why Martin texted me. Because he smelled smoke. And Daniel wasn't answering calls. How long do you have? I asked. For what? Before this private investor expects repayment. He checked his phone. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Not 30 days. Not a month. 14 days. You told me 30, I said. That was for payroll. I felt cold all over. So there were 2 clocks ticking. Payroll. Private debt. Both loud. Both dangerous. Mom, he said quietly, I can fix this. How? He didn't respond immediately. I'm negotiating another deal. Is it signed? No. Then it's hope again. Silence. I turned toward him. When did you stop telling the truth, Daniel? He flinched. I didn't. You're still doing it. I'm trying to protect everyone. By hiding everything. His shoulders sagged. I walked back to the table slowly. Placed my hands flat on the wood. You're not protecting anyone, I said softly. You're isolating yourself. I can handle it. You already can't. That landed. Hard. We sat there in the quiet. The illusion had cracks everywhere now. But something still didn't add up. Why 60,000? I asked suddenly. What? Why that amount? He hesitated again. It covered immediate vendor pressure. And he looked down. And personal liquidity. Personal, I repeated. For what? Silence. Daniel. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. She wanted to renovate the kitchen. The air left my lungs. So the private investor money helped fund a renovation, while payroll was at risk, while investors were uninformed, while contracts were unsigned, and while my credit card paid for a piano. I sat down slowly. When did your life become performance? I asked. He didn't answer, because maybe he didn't know. Or maybe he did. Then my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. This time it was a voice note. Just 3 seconds long. I played it. A male voice. Calm. Cold. You have 14 days. I froze. Daniel's face drained of color. That's him, he whispered. The private investor. He didn't even need to threaten. Just remind. 14 days. I looked at my son. Really looked at him. He wasn't just drowning. He was surrounded. Investors suspicious. Partners questioning. Private lender counting down. Wife unaware. And me, holding pieces of truth he still wasn't fully sharing. Because something in my heart told me this wasn't the final layer. There was still something he hadn't said. Something bigger. Because no one risked this much. Just to renovate a kitchen. I turned off the voice note slowly. Daniel, I said quietly. Yes. Who introduced you to that investor? He hesitated. Too long. Then finally said, Claire. My stomach dropped. Claire. His wife. And suddenly, this wasn't just financial anymore. The name echoed in my head. Claire. Not a colleague. Not a broker. Not some desperate late-night connection. His wife. She introduced you? I asked slowly. Daniel nodded. She said he was trustworthy. Who is he? A private capital consultant. That's not a name. He hesitated. Victor Hale. I didn't recognize it, but I didn't like how carefully he said it. When did she introduce you? I asked. 3 months ago. 3 months. That meant this wasn't panic borrowing. It was planned. Why didn't you tell me? He looked exhausted. Because I knew what you'd think. What would I think? That she was interfering. Was she? Silence. I stood up and paced slowly. The pieces were rearranging themselves. Claire encouraging expansion. Claire suggesting renovations. Claire pushing for appearances. Claire introducing private money. I stopped. Whose idea was the kitchen renovation? He hesitated. Claire's. And the piano. Claire thought it would be good for the brand. And the spa weekend? He looked embarrassed. She said investors like to see success. Success. Not stability. Not numbers. Image. I turned toward him. Daniel, are you building a company? He looked up. Or are you building a lifestyle? That hit him. I'm building both, he said defensively. With borrowed money? It's strategic. No, I said quietly. It's fragile. He rubbed his forehead. You don't understand the pressure. Then explain it. She hates looking small. The words slipped out before he could stop them. We both froze. Hates looking small? I repeated. He nodded faintly. She grew up with nothing. She told herself she'd never look poor again. And suddenly something softened inside me. Because I understood that. But understanding didn't make it safe. Does she know about the 14 days? I asked. No. Does she know about the payroll risk? No. Does she know you used my credit line? His silence answered. So she was pushing the image, but not seeing the cracks. Or maybe she was. Why did she introduce Victor? I asked. She said he could help accelerate growth. And did he? For a while. How? He connected us to suppliers. At what cost? Equity discussion. My stomach tightened. Did you give him equity? Not officially. Not officially. Which meant informally. Verbally. On expectation. That was worse. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. A message this time. We should talk. Claire doesn't know I contacted you. I stared at it. Daniel leaned forward. What does it say? I showed him. His face went pale. That's Victor. Why is he messaging me? I don't know. But we both knew that wasn't true. Victor knew I had leverage. He knew my name was still tied to certain legal documents. He knew I wasn't blinded by image. And he wanted something. Did Claire tell him about me? I asked quietly. Daniel nodded. She said you used to manage Dad's accounts. So this wasn't random. He had studied the family, understood the dynamics, identified influence. And now, he was pulling strings. Does Claire know you're in trouble? I asked again. Daniel looked down. She knows revenue slowed. But not how much. No. And not about the private repayment clock. No. So she thinks everything is temporary. Yes, and she still wants renovations. His jaw tightened. She says if we don't look successful, investors won't believe we are. There it was again. Performance over foundation. I sat down slowly. Daniel, does she love you? The question surprised him. Yes. Or does she love the version of you she believes you're becoming? He didn't answer. That silence felt heavier than all the financial numbers combined. I need to know something, I said. Did Claire push you to miss that investor meeting? He looked up sharply. No, but the hesitation came too fast. Daniel, she said it might be better to reschedule. Why? She thought the projections would look stronger next quarter. So yes, she did. Not directly, but strategically. Delay the truth. Improve the image. Buy time. Again. And this Victor, I continued. What does he get if you fail? Daniel's throat tightened. He gets repayment priority. Meaning, he can seize certain company assets. My heart pounded. Which assets? He looked at me. The development patents. Those were the only real value the company had. Not the image. Not the furniture. Not the social media posts. The patents. And suddenly I understood. Victor wasn't helping them grow. He was positioning himself to acquire. Does Claire know that? I asked. No. Or does she? His silence this time wasn't ignorance. It was doubt. My phone buzzed again. Another message. You should check the draft equity agreement your son signed. I looked up sharply. Daniel. He looked confused. I didn't sign equity. Victor says you did. His breathing quickened. He gave me a preliminary draft. Did you sign anything? I signed acknowledgement of intent. My blood ran cold. That's binding in some cases. He stared at me. I didn't think. That's the problem. The doorbell rang. We both jumped. Slowly, carefully, I walked toward the door. Through the glass panel I saw her. Claire, standing perfectly composed. Hair styled, phone in hand, smile ready. She hadn't come panicked. She had come prepared. I opened the door. Hi, Mom, she said sweetly. Daniel stood behind me. She looked between us. Oh, she said softly. So you talked. There was no shock in her eyes. Only calculation. She stepped inside without waiting to be invited, placed her designer bag on the table. Daniel, she said gently, you told her everything? Not everything, I answered. She looked at me, and for a split second, the sweetness disappeared. I assume Victor reached out, she said calmly. You knew he would? I asked. She smiled faintly. He's efficient. Efficient at what? I asked. Securing opportunities. For who? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she looked at Daniel. You shouldn't have panicked. I didn't, he muttered. You missed the meeting. That was strategic. She smiled slightly. Not strategic enough. The tone. It wasn't supportive. It was corrective. Like she was managing him. Not loving him. Did you read the draft equity terms? I asked her. She looked at me calmly. Of course. And if Daniel can't meet repayment, Victor absorbs a minority controlling stake. Controlling. I repeated. Yes, she said softly. That's standard risk positioning. Standard. She said it like it was nothing. You never told me that, Daniel whispered. I didn't want to overwhelm you, she replied sweetly. My chest tightened. She hadn't hidden it accidentally. She had withheld it deliberately. Claire, I said carefully, why introduce Victor at all? She looked at me. Direct. Calm. Because Daniel needs someone stronger than hesitation guiding him. Stronger than hesitation. Was that what she thought I represented? Caution? Doubt? Stability? You mean someone who pushes him into risk? I asked. I mean someone who believes in scale. Believes in scale. Even if it breaks him. I looked at my son. He looked smaller now. Not weak. Just cornered. Between ambition and pressure. Between performance and collapse. And between two women. One who believed in protection. One who believed in expansion at any cost. Claire picked up her phone. There's something else, she said lightly. She opened a document. Turned the screen toward me. It was a signed preliminary intent form. With Daniel's signature. And Victor's. And one more line. Claire's signature. As witness. But below that, a clause I hadn't seen before. In case of default, personal guarantor review may extend to immediate family credit lines. My credit line. My hands went cold. You attached me? I whispered. Claire smiled faintly. Only as precaution. Without asking me? Your family, she said, as if that made it reasonable. Daniel looked at her in shock. You told me it was isolated risk. It mostly is, she said gently. Mostly. Daniel, please don't dramatize. Dramatize. Like the 14-day countdown was a misunderstanding. Like the private investor voice note wasn't a threat. Like my financial exposure was minor. I stepped back. The room suddenly felt smaller. The illusion wasn't just Daniel's. It was engineered. Claire wasn't reacting to pressure. She was orchestrating leverage. Victor wasn't random. He was chosen. And I had been included as collateral. Without consent. I looked at Claire carefully. Why didn't you tell me? She held my gaze. Because you would have said no. Yes, I would have. And that was the problem. Daniel's voice cracked. You risked my mother's finances? Claire turned toward him. I protected your future. At what cost? At temporary discomfort. Temporary. 14 days. Private lenders. Equity loss. Credit exposure. Temporary. I took a slow breath. Very slow. Claire, I said quietly, did you ever intend to repay Victor? She paused. Just a second too long. Then smiled. Of course. But I saw it. The flicker. The calculation. And suddenly, I realized something far worse than financial mismanagement. This wasn't desperation. This was strategy. And maybe Victor wasn't just an investor. Maybe he was positioned to acquire not just the company, but leverage over my son and over me, because the next message came at that exact moment. My phone buzzed again. A new text. You should review the collateral list again. There was an amendment. I looked up slowly. Daniel, I whispered. What? There's an amendment. He went pale. Claire's smile disappeared for the first time. Amendment, she repeated. I opened the attachment, scrolled, and froze, because this time, the collateral didn't just include my credit line. It included partial claim access to the property held under my name. My house. I looked at Claire, and she didn't look surprised. My house. The word echoed inside my head like something fragile breaking in slow motion. My house. I repeated. Daniel stepped forward. What do you mean your house? I turned the phone toward him. He read the clause. Once. Twice. His face drained of color. That's not possible. Claire didn't move. Didn't blink. She simply watched us absorb it. It's conditional, she said calmly. Only in case of default. Default in 14 days? I asked quietly. She didn't answer immediately. And that was answer enough. The house wasn't just property. It was the last thing your father left me. The place where Daniel learned to walk. The kitchen where birthdays were celebrated. The garden where I buried our old dog beneath the oak tree. It wasn't an asset. It was memory. And she had attached it like a detachable item. Without telling me. You forged nothing, I said slowly. Because my signature wasn't there. Just referenced. Claire tilted her head. It's a provisional lien framework. That's legal language for pressure, I replied. Daniel looked at her. You said it was isolated risk. It is, she insisted. If we hit projections. If, I repeated. Everything depended on if. If investors paid on time. If projections materialized. If revenue increased. If private lender patience held. If image sustained belief. Too many ifs. Not enough stability. I felt something shift inside me. Not fear. Not anger. Clarity. For months I had reacted. Now I was observing. Claire wasn't reckless. She was calculated. She had studied leverage. She knew Daniel feared looking small. She knew I feared losing family. She used both. Victor wrote this clause, I said. Claire shook her head slightly. No. I suggested broader collateral coverage. Daniel looked stunned. You suggested it? It strengthens negotiation position. At the risk of my mother's house? At the benefit of your future. The way she said future. Like it was a currency you could borrow against. My phone rang. The same unknown number. Victor. I answered. Mrs. May. His voice was smooth. Polished. Professional. You're reviewing the amendment, I assume. I am. You should know it's purely protective. For who? I asked calmly. For all stakeholders. I wasn't consulted. You were referenced as stabilizing guarantor. Stabilizing? Like I was a financial cushion. You attached my property without consent. Technically, he replied. It activates only upon procedural escalation. And what triggers escalation? Missed repayment milestones, which are in 14 days. A pause. Yes. Daniel stepped closer. Put it on speaker. I did. Victor's tone didn't change. Daniel, good to hear your voice. You said equity discussion only. This is standard risk mitigation. You didn't say my mother's property. Your wife approved the structure. Silence fell like a weight. Claire didn't deny it. You approved my mother's house as collateral? Daniel asked, disbelief shaking his voice. Claire remained composed. It's temporary leverage. You never told me. You would have hesitated. That word again. Hesitation. As if caution was weakness. Victor continued smoothly. The arrangement benefits you both. Aggressive growth requires bold positioning. I spoke softly. Bold for you. Dangerous for us. He didn't flinch. Mrs. May, your credit profile strengthens confidence. Without it, risk appetite reduces. There are other ways, I replied. Less efficient ways, he said. Efficient. Everything about him was efficiency. Extract value. Secure leverage. Acquire control. I ended the call. No goodbye. No courtesy. The room felt charged. Dana looked at Claire like he didn't recognize her. You risked my mother's house. She stepped closer to him. I secured your breakthrough. At what cost? Temporary exposure. He shook his head. That's not temporary. That's everything. I watched them carefully. This wasn't just finance. This was power. Claire believed expansion required sacrifice. She believed security was an obstacle. She believed image built opportunity. And she believed I was holding Daniel back. But she made one mistake. She thought I would stay quiet. Claire, I said gently. She looked at me. Yes. Did you ever intend to remove the clause? Her expression shifted. Subtle, but visible. It would dissolve after repayment. That wasn't my question. Silence. Daniel looked between us. Claire. She inhaled slowly. It was a contingency. For what? In case you hesitated again. There it was. If Daniel hesitated, Victor could step in, acquire equity, invoke collateral, and I would be pressured to comply to protect my house. Not because of business, because of fear. Daniel stepped back from her. You were building a trap. She stiffened. I was building security. For who? He asked. For us. But she didn't say family. She didn't say you. She said us. And somehow it felt smaller. I walked toward the window, looked outside. The sky was gray, heavy, storm coming, and I realized something quietly powerful. For months I had felt powerless, like an ATM, like collateral, like a background figure. But right now, they needed me. Without my credit line, without my property, without my stability, Victor's leverage weakens. Claire's structure collapses. Daniel's timeline changes. Power had shifted. I turned around slowly. Daniel, I said. Yes. Do you want control of your company? Yes. Do you want to build something real? Yes. Then you need to stop borrowing confidence. He swallowed. I looked at Claire. And you need to stop engineering pressure. Her jaw tightened. You think small. No, I said calmly. I think long. My phone buzzed again. Bank notification. Fraud department follow-up. Card officially frozen. Credit line review initiated. I showed them both. Claire's composure cracked for the first time. You froze it. Yes. You didn't tell us. You didn't tell me about the house. Silence. Real silence. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. What happens now? I answered slowly. Now we renegotiate. With Victor, he asked. No. With reality. Claire crossed her arms. And how do you plan to do that? I met her eyes directly. By removing myself. Daniel looked alarmed. What? I will withdraw my credit authorization. You can't. I can. And the house. I will formally restrict lien eligibility. Victor would lose his stabilizing guarantor. The collateral stack would weaken. The pressure would reverse. Claire understood that immediately. You're collapsing the structure, she said quietly. No, I replied. I'm exposing it. Daniel's breathing quickened. If you do that, Victor could trigger early repayment. Yes, and we don't have liquidity. I know. He looked panicked. So what do we do? I stepped closer to him. You face it honestly. Claire shook her head. You're forcing collapse. I'm preventing manipulation. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Victor. I strongly advise against altering guarantor terms. It could accelerate enforcement. There it was. Threat. Polite. Corporate. But clear. Accelerate enforcement. Which meant he was ready. Waiting. Positioned. I looked at Daniel. Did you ever ask yourself why repayment window was 14 days? He hesitated. No, because it wasn't designed for success. Claire's face went still. It was designed for failure. Victor expected default, expected acquisition, expected leverage activation, and Claire, whether knowingly or not, helped him build the path. Daniel looked at her. Did you know? She didn't answer, and that silence was louder than everything else. The sky outside darkened. Thunder rolled in the distance. Inside the house, everything had shifted. I was no longer reacting. I was choosing, and they were no longer confident. They were uncertain, because the one person they assumed would absorb pressure was stepping out of the equation. I opened my banking app, began drafting a formal guarantor withdrawal notice. Claire watched carefully. You're making this worse. No, I said quietly. I'm making it real. Daniel whispered. Mom, what if this destroys everything? I looked at him. It might. Silence. Then I added softly, but at least it won't destroy us quietly. My phone buzzed again. New email. From Victor. Subject line. Notice of conditional escalation. I opened it. Read the first line, and felt the air leave my lungs, because the repayment window wasn't 14 days anymore. It had been shortened to 72 hours. I looked up slowly. They've accelerated. Daniel's face went white. Claire didn't blink, which meant she knew that was possible, and maybe she knew it would happen. 72 hours. I read the email again, then again, as if the number might change. It didn't. 72 hours to satisfy repayment conditions or collateral enforcement procedures may begin. My hands felt steady, strangely steady. Daniel was not. What does that mean? He asked, voice thin. It means, I said calmly. Victor was waiting for an excuse. Claire finally stepped forward. That's not how private capital works. I turned to her. Isn't it? She didn't answer immediately, and that hesitation told me everything. Daniel grabbed his phone. I'm calling him. No, I said firmly. He froze. Not like this. Mom, we don't have time. Exactly. Panic is leverage. Calm is power. Victor expected panic. He expected scrambling. He expected us divided. He did not expect silence. Claire exhaled slowly. This is because you froze the card. No, I replied evenly. This is because the structure was designed to accelerate under stress. She held my gaze. You're overestimating conspiracy, and you're underestimating intent. Daniel looked between us like a man watching two storms collide. I stepped closer to the table. Daniel, tell me something honestly. He nodded quickly. When you signed the acknowledgement of intent, did Victor explain acceleration triggers? He swallowed. He said if risk profile shifts, timeline may adjust. Risk profile, I repeated. What changed? Claire demanded. I looked at her. I withdrew compliance. Silence. Then it hit her. The guaranteed destabilization clause, she whispered. Yes, by removing myself. I signaled internal instability, which allowed Victor to reassess risk, which allowed him to accelerate. It was written in fine print. Not obvious, but intentional. Daniel ran his hands through his hair. So this is your fault, he asked me, not accusing, just desperate. No, I said softly. It's the system's response to exposure. Claire stepped closer. You forced his hand. I revealed his hand. That's the difference. My phone buzzed again. New email attachment. Preliminary asset evaluation schedule. They were already preparing inventory, patents, supplier contracts, office equipment, and at the bottom, conditional residential lien review. My house, still listed, even after withdrawal request. That's illegal, Daniel whispered. Not if the structure hasn't formally dissolved, Claire said quietly. I looked at her sharply. You knew. Her jaw tightened. I knew it could escalate, but you didn't think it would. She didn't respond, and that silence felt heavier than guilt. It felt like calculation gone wrong. I walked to the window again. Rain had started, soft at first, then heavier. 3 days, 72 hours, not to build revenue, not to secure investors, but to survive. Daniel's phone rang. Victor. We all stared at it. Answer, Claire whispered. I shook my head. Speaker, I said. Daniel answered. Victor. Daniel. Victor's voice was smooth as ever. I assume you saw the notice. Yes. I'm surprised by the destabilization request from your mother. I spoke clearly. I prefer transparency. Transparency is admirable, Victor replied, but markets punish instability. This isn't a market, I said. It's a contract, and contracts respond to risk. You designed the risk. A soft chuckle. I designed protection. For yourself, I corrected. For stakeholders, he replied calmly. Daniel's voice cracked slightly. What do you want? Direct. Raw. Victor didn't hesitate. Immediate liquidity injection of 40% outstanding balance. Daniel went pale. That's impossible. Then we proceed with structural adjustment, which meant equity seizure. Asset claim. Control shift. I spoke again. What happens if we secure third-party refinancing within 72 hours? A pause. Victor hadn't expected that. If you can prove binding commitment, we may reconsider enforcement. May, not will. Still leverage. Claire stepped forward. We can't secure that in 3 days. Maybe not traditionally, I said quietly. Daniel looked at me. What are you thinking? I didn't answer immediately, because the truth was, I wasn't thinking about banks or investors. I was thinking about something Victor hadn't accounted for. Reputation. Victor continued smoothly. I advise against emotional decisions. Accelerated timelines are uncomfortable, but manageable. You expected us to default, I said calmly. Silence. Just for a fraction of a second. That's an assumption, he replied. No, I said softly. That's a pattern. Short window. High leverage. Broad collateral. Acceleration clause. Acquisition positioning. He didn't deny it. Daniel ended the call. The room felt electric. Claire looked at me differently now. Not dismissive. Not superior. Cautious. What are you planning? She asked quietly. I met her eyes. I'm planning to remove his appetite. Daniel frowned. What does that mean? It means, I said slowly, if acquiring you becomes expensive, he loses interest. Claire shook her head. He thrives on pressure. Then we increase exposure. She narrowed her eyes. How? I picked up my phone, opened my contacts, scrolled, and stopped at a name I hadn't called in years. Harold Benton, former compliance director, retired, but well-connected. Victor had a reputation for aggressive acquisitions, but reputation can cut both ways. Daniel watched me. Mom, you asked me once why I don't travel, I said softly. You said I don't spend. He looked ashamed. I was building reserves, I continued. Not just money, information, connections, quiet influence. Claire's expression shifted slightly. She hadn't expected that. She thought I was passive, conservative, background. She forgot. I once managed your father's portfolio, and we didn't survive decades in business by reacting emotionally. I dialed Harold. It rang twice. May. His voice older, but sharp. Yes. I haven't heard from you in years. I need advice. A pause. That's serious? Yes. Come to my office. I need remote discretion. Another pause. Who are we dealing with? Victor Hale. Silence. Longer this time. I'll call you back in 5 minutes, Harold said, and hung up. Claire looked unsettled now. You know people? She asked. I know patterns. Daniel stepped closer. Mom, can you really stop this? I can't promise that. But I can promise this. I looked at both of them. I will not let your future be engineered by someone who profits from your collapse. Claire swallowed slightly. For the first time, she looked unsure, not defeated, but uncertain. My phone buzzed. Harold calling back. I answered. Victor's fund has been under quiet review, he said immediately. For what? Aggressive default triggers. My pulse steadied. There are complaints? Not public. Yet. 3 small firms collapsed after accelerated enforcement. Exactly the pattern. And regulators? I asked, watching, carefully. I felt something click. Victor thrives on silence. But scrutiny? That changes appetite. I ended the call slowly. Daniel watched me. Well, I met his eyes. We don't just survive 72 hours. We make Victor uncomfortable. Claire whispered, You're going to expose him. No, I said calmly. I'm going to remind him he's visible. Big difference. Rain hit harder against the glass. 3 days. But now, the energy in the room had shifted. Not panic. Strategy. Victor expected a desperate son, a divided family, a silent mother. Instead, he was about to face coordination, and scrutiny, and something else he didn't expect. Claire stepped forward slowly. If we do this, there's no going back. I looked at her carefully. You already crossed that line when you attached my house. Silence. Then she said something unexpected. I didn't think he'd accelerate. And for the first time, she sounded human. Not strategic. Not polished. Human. Daniel exhaled shakily. What do we do first? I picked up my phone again, opened email, and began drafting something simple. Subject line. Request for clarification of acceleration basis and collateral scope review. Legal. Polite. Public record. CC. Victor. His compliance department. And one more address Harold just gave me. Regulatory oversight liaison. Claire's eyes widened slightly. You're copying regulators? I'm asking for transparency. Which, in Victor's world, is pressure. I hit send. The sound of the email leaving felt louder than thunder. 72 hours had started, but so had something else. A spotlight. And Victor does not operate comfortably in light. My phone buzzed almost instantly. New email. From Victor. Short. Cold. Mrs. May, I strongly suggest we handle this privately. I smiled faintly, because now he sounded uncomfortable, and that meant the power had begun to shift.